Okay, we're good.
Good to go?
Yes.
All right. So welcome back, everyone. We will start with case number 1, E-03-20-21, special permit at 327 through 341 and 347 Monroe Avenue to construct a 2-lane drive-through for proposed restaurant, Burger King, and action requiring City Planning Commission approval. In motion?
Motion.
Second.
Ooh.
Mr. Flowers?
Yeah.
And who's second?
Harry.
Give it to me.
Technically, Eugenio got the first one.
That's okay. I'll let you guys. I agree with you guys.
Okay, case number 1. Any discussion?
It seems like a workaround to me that if there's no plan to actually build the structure, the second structure, but the second structure is what's getting them around a zoning board of appeals hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And now the request is to also eliminate any sort of expiration on this. Right, we had a 3-year as a part of the first approval. So how do we ensure that the second structure does get built? Can city staff kind of elaborate on that process? I know somebody mentioned a 1-year timeline for pulling permits. Will the same thing happen for the second structure?
Yeah, I had the same question. As long as that section structure is actually built.
Yes. Fine,
Most
great.
of my concerns.
Yep. It fixes the site plan issue that kept coming up about a density piece and how the massing looks on the street level and it fixes a lot of that stuff.
Right.
I just want to make sure it happens.
I agree. Same concern.
So Anna, any not concerns, any feedback for that? Is there any way to kind of guarantee that that building will be constructed?
Can we condition the approval on the construction of the proposed retail space on the corner of the lot?
Well, I'm wondering whether we have to in this approval or whether the process of the site plan and building permits in and by themselves would do it, that they commit in a site plan to build both buildings, they commit here, they get a building permit that has to be for both. When they finish, to get a certificate of occupancy, I think it would be contingent on having both built. But if Jill's available to comment, since she does these site plan reviews, and I don't.
While we're waiting for Jill to return, can anybody speak?
No, I'm here. I never left.
Okay.
So as far as that goes, I mean, I guess I'm a little bit going to defer, I think, to Tom on this more than anything. You know, site plan review, it really takes its cues from whatever the board actions are. And we haven't historically conditioned site plan review in that sort of manner. You know, perhaps you could say, you know, that if you were so inclined to approve it, that you would desire that that second building, you know, be constructed within, I don't know, 2 years of approval. And I don't know, Tom, how do you think legally, is that something that would be acceptable?
But
Oh, you're muted.
You're muted. Oh.
I would think that it would be more appropriate condition might be that they don't start operation of the drive-through until the second building.
Now, another way that we could look at it, I know they want to permanent. We could go back and condition it on 2 years, and then they'll have to come back, and within 2 years the new building is not there. Then they're kind of gonna give us the answer, right?
Well,
Yeah,
but
I think that the conditional timeline would eliminate funding.
Yeah.
Right. They have
It's a
time.
funding issue.
Yeah, so I think it'd be a much more direct thing to say, now this would have to be, if you decided that this was an important element, that the second building is part of their design to screen
And to mitigate,
and mitigate the drive-through.
And eliminate the other issues.
Yeah, and it also, with variances, avoids variances, but your role is more like with regard to the drive-through. And they did say that this would help screen
building,
and make the site look less like a automobile-centric site, because it would have this building right on the sidewalk on the corner. And so since that's an essential element of your approval of the drive-through, you could condition the certificate of occupancy for the Burger King to be contingent on completing the outbuilding.
okay, now, would be,
Now, I'm not, this is if you feel that the outbuilding is an element that weighs in your approval of the drive-through.
I think from what I'm sorry, go ahead, Commissioner.
yeah, I guess I was going to say, I think based upon, what we heard in testimony and in the staff report, the conditions that ZBA had put on them and they needed to be mitigated was to have that building at that corner. And so I think that it's critical that, I think as Eugenio was asking, or not Eugenio, Milton was saying, that we need to have some kind of verification that that building will be built. Because again, initially we're approving the drive-through. But if they, once they have completed the drive-through, they're going to get the C of O because they completed it. But again, we need to have some indication that that second building will be built within a certain time frame after they get their C of O for the Burger King. We could condition it that way.
I think that would be an option too. Tom, you're muted. I see you talking.
The applicant said that they intended to have the building built, not necessarily occupied, by the time the Burger King was up and operating.
Oh, okay, I missed that.
Yeah. And also, if you're approving a use that's contingent on a certain set of conditions, wouldn't you want to say that those conditions have to be in place before the use begins?
Yes.
Not like
Exactly.
kind of, should have, 2 years on or something like that.
Right.
No, that makes perfect sense to me.
So in that case, we could approve it with the condition that the second building be completed at the same time that the Burger King is completed?
Or that it be completed.
No.
The way you get at that is saying no certificate of occupancy for the Burger King until the
second building is completed.
Yeah.
Isn't there a financing issue also?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how you mask it.
Right.
I mean, if I'm a bank and you tell me that you have those constraints, you're not getting money from me.
Is there a way, and that's the point, I mean, they're ready to go to build the Burger King like now, but they're not ready to start building the second structure from a financing standpoint or a funding standpoint. Is there some way that we, like, what type of legal hurdle can we, or what type of like processing hurdle do they need to go through? They need to file for permits. There's got to be something that we can say, great, you can get C of O as long as we know that there's been forward progress on this second structure.
Well, I thought the financing was determinant on this. So
Yeah.
they're
Oh, is it for both? Like
Yeah.
they need to happen contingent?
correct.
Yeah, I think before you start building, you would have done enough due diligence to commit a bank to tell a bank you will find a tenant.
A tenant, right.
Yeah, okay.
But I guess, and maybe I heard differently, Tom, but what I heard in the hearing was that they were going to be looking for a tenant, and because they weren't sure who that tenant would be, there may be the necessary changes for the elevation of the property that may require them to come back if they then weren't meeting our requirements.
Yeah.
So, and that they were going to be putting in all of the utilities necessary for that building, but not constructing it immediately because they were seeking out a
Right.
tenant. Did anybody else hear that, or did
No,
I
that's
heard
right.
that.
That's what I
No,
heard.
no,
I
that's
heard
true, but
Something
I think that
similar.
both are true. That they said, yes, that they might have to come back, but also that they intended to have the building built. by
Yeah, the
time
implication
everything
on-
started.
The implication on the follow-up was if a new tenant came in and wanted some tweaks, as all tenants do, they'd be happy to adjust the interior, et cetera. But I walked away with the impression that they can't get funding for the existing Burger King that they're ready to build because we put a temporary on it.
Right.
To resolve that, they put this building on the corner. And while that's not their priority, they realize that it's necessary to get this approved. So they're going to build it secondary to the Burger King.
Mhm.
And if they have to tweak it later to make a tenant happy, they will tweak it later, but not, they're going to hold the plans until they get a tenant and then build based on the tenant.
Right.
So
Oh,
I think I like Tom Worth's approach of just tagging a contingency on the C of O to say, yeah, go ahead, build the Burger King, apply for a C of O, but you're not getting it till you start building that other building.
Yeah, if we could do that, that would be the best way. Tom's suggestion, because I'm looking at it almost like the intent is to screen the car so it doesn't look like. So I'm looking at it almost like a fence. So when we do condition to adding a fence, they have to do it when they're doing the construction. So I'm looking at the building, if that is the intent to kind of screen a little bit of that car look, then I'm looking at it almost the same way because it's the same concept. Not the same thing, not a fence, but it's the same concept, which is to make sure that we screen those cars. So my condition will be treating it as such, and they will have to build it as before they occupy, before they get the occupancy.
Evo. Mhm. Not Milton. Mr. Flower, is that consistent with what you think should be
Yeah.
done as far as having some leverage?
Yeah, it sounds right. I
Okay.
think we just have to do, there has to be something.
Okay,
It sounds right.
all right.
Yeah.
Any other concerns, any other questions? If I hear what is being said, is we're looking at basically approving the two-lane drive-through with the condition that before they get their C of O, they have to show that they can start construction of the second building.
So, okay, let me ask you this. Do you want drawings, construction drawings submitted for that second building in order to get a C of O?
No,
No.
I mean drawings of the building.
I would say yes. If they're going to be submitting the drawings for permit, then if this is all looked as one, then yes, I want the drawings. And if they have to go back and revise and whatever they have to do, maybe the concept change a little bit, that's fine. But they should be submitting what they have in mind right now, even if it's this concept that they submitted.
Mhm.
The drawing should be a full package, a full bidding document for permitting.
Because the drawing basically tells them and tells us that they've identified what they need in order to fund to build that second structure.
So, okay,
Right.
so I just want to fully understand this. So you're saying before issuance of a C of O, they have to submit to us a set of construction drawings for the building at the corner?
Yes.
Even if they face it, phase 1, phase 2, that's fine. The construction drawings are complete.
I mean, construction drawings won't screen the
Yeah,
drive-through.
I
That's,
completely agree with Tom.
that's not
So
leverage.
is there something more
Not enough.
binding, like that you could have, that they have to have pulled a permit?
Oh, yes, that's what I was getting to. Construction drawings for a permit.
Right.
It's so, there's a lot of people on this call that know a lot more about you commissioners do about the process of getting a building permit stuff. But I mean, when you've pulled a building permit, you put in a lot of investment
Correct.
to get to that point. Like, it's not like you're just doing some paper structure that you don't ever intend to build. Is that the case or is it not?
Right. And then you
But
have
also, you have what? You have 1 full year before your permit expires. So you can actually pull it with delayed building for another year.
correct.
Yeah, so then you just all have to weigh whether having that building there, like whether it's all right temporarily not to have that building there for a year or so. while the drive-through operates.
It sounds like that's their intention right now, Tom. I think they're already planning on waiting like a year to do. I mean, if they find a tenant, I'm sure they'll build it faster, but it sounds like phase 2 is going to at least be a year. But I think having the permit pulled, to your point, is they have to do a fair amount of work and put a fair amount of capital into the planning side of it to have the drawings like ready to go and submitted for review. So at least there's a bit more skin in the game.
And then I think oftentimes the financial institutions will require that to happen as well.
Right.
Show me your plans, show me what you've designed and how that's going to impact what you're asking money for.
But
Right.
if
And
part
that
of
would
the
be,
reason,
go ahead, Carol, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if part of the reason they want us to get rid of the temporary is so that they can get the funding, and the
Yes.
funding includes this building, why would you delay for
Right.
another 2 years if you've gotten the money?
Correct.
Get as fast as you can.
Correct. And from a constructability standpoint also, why would you pay mobilization twice? Why would you have excavated? Why you have to go through the whole struggle? It is actually more economical to do both of them at the same time than have 2 mobilizations and have increased the cost of construction. So
What happens if they get the drawings, they pull the permits, and they never build the building?
Right.
You know, money ran
It's-
out, we had to fix
Yeah.
something at the
Yeah.
drive-through, we
Yeah.
wound up, the funding changed,
then they don't get the certificate of occupancy.
Well, but
but they need the C of O for Burger King to open.
Yeah, I think that, so in my time, we haven't been in that sort of situation, but I think we would look at it is that they weren't in compliance with the special permit. And if that was the case, we would probably then insist that they pursue the variances that would be necessary, but at that point, you've already got a building constructed.
Well, building constructed and functioning as a drive-through restaurant,
Correct.
unshielded, which you told us we were gonna do the shielding, but, so I don't know, I'm a little uncomfortable with this. They can have a year, but then another year on top of that, but then because it's gonna be 2025 and I'm gonna be driving by going, hey, they never built that building. That's crazy. So I'd like to, I agree giving them a little leverage. I want them to be able to have a functioning business here. They've obviously got a lot invested and I think it could work at this spot, but I want to put some teeth in whatever restrictions we place.
Well, I'm thinking they really want to have a tenant before they make a commitment to build. That's what I got out of them. And
No,
I
but I think-
understand that. And even going to the bank to get the loan, you want to show you've got a tenant to lease it to. So can anything be put into the stipulation that is to basically really encourage them to find somebody to lease it?
You don't, I mean, you have it within your authority to make a condition that they have the building ready by some event certain as a condition of granting the special permit. If you think that the building's important enough to do that.
And so I agree with you, Tom. I think that if we're saying that they have offered an option to screen that facility with a building on the corner, that building has to show up. And if we can, we could condition it saying, okay, we will approve the 2-lane drive-through, but you must have a building at that corner within a year of your C of O for the Burger King. So that,
Yeah.
so that if it doesn't happen, then we'll pull the C of O. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yes.
it makes sense because we could condition like, and I'm gonna go back to the fence. We could condition you need to add a fence by if the reason is to screen the parking lot. Yeah, I'll set a condition with them. They have to build it within the next. I don't know. It's up to you guys. What do you guys think? A year?
Yep, I think a year gives them plenty of time. If they're going to build it, they're going to get the funding pretty much at the same time as they're going to do for the Burger King, if they're smart.
Exactly.
And then,
They cited that as a
Right.
reason they needed our
Right.
support here.
and again, our
Tacked on
reason,
another 500,000 for this building specifically.
right. And then our reason to justify giving them unlimited time to do that or not restricted time, is for their funding and for the stipulation that that building helps to mitigate issues that the zoning, that ZBA had. And that's critical for both sides of the equation. So we'll give you permission, we'll take away the year stipulation, but we want a new building within a year of your C of O for the Burger King. Make sense?
I would support that.
Yeah,
David, I would just,
Yes, please.
I guess, add to that or change that a little bit, and that the
Yep.
building is directly, I guess, a mitigating feature that's at least important to me to allowing the drive-through,
Mm-hmm.
to allowing the drive-through to be permanent.
Yes.
Agreed.
Okay, so without the building there, you're asking for a leap of faith. Now they made an application that says they're going to build this building. They told us they're committed to building the building. So our decision is based on those facts as presented at the hearing. They also told us they weren't sure when they were going to build the building. And that's, I guess, the concern. It kind of harkens back to
Trust but verify.
a different, well, no, it was the townhouses that were going to be on the corner of the,
Barrington?
Monroe, right. They were going to build these townhouses for sale, and that was part of the whole plan. And then they never built them, and they had to come back, and we actually had to rehear the case without the townhouses. Well, at that point, everything's built.
That was the old movie theater.
Right.
Okay.
I could imagine, they can't get a tenant, so now they got to go to zoning board and get that variance that they couldn't get before.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what is the issue? I guess from my standpoint, based on the facts as presented, I would support making the drive-through permanent, but there does need to be some kind of way to, I guess, ensure that the facts the outcome, which is a building on the corner, is linked to that. So whether it's the C of O, I don't know if there's anything like a letter of credit that, their funding's tied up until they get that thing built. I mean, I get that it might take them a while to find a tenant. I also get that the longer it takes, the less motivated they would be to find it, because their drive-through is spinning off a bunch of cash.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
I agree. 100% agree with it. And it seems like it's not part of the logistic plan. It's not something that they have established. Like they know what they want. It's whatever, whenever it happens. So
Building solves the problem, and now let's go back to our drive-through.
yeah, so I think it's absolutely right.
Okay, so let me see if I have a relatively fine tune of what we want. We're looking at wanting to potentially approve the 2-lane drive-through with no time limit, but condition the building on the corner started construction within a year of their C of O for the restaurant.
Yes,
Yep.
I second that proposal.
Okay, all right, did everybody else okay with that?
No, I need an explanation again.
Yes,
The drive-through is conditioned to, no, it's not, you're saying it's not conditioned to
no,
anything.
the driveway is not conditioned. We're going to approve it as requested. But we are also saying that given that we've approved it as requested, part of the mitigation for the drive-through was to have it screened by the building on the corner. So we're saying
It
we're
is
going to give you the drive-through, but you still have to show us that you're going to start construction within a year of your C of O on that building on the corner. So that
Or else, so it is conditioned.
yeah, so
Yeah, it
if
is
that doesn't happen, we're gonna pull your proposal for your drive-through.
I mean, it's not really conditioned. It's like saying that you're going to do what you said you're going to do.
Well,
Right.
They're offering up this building as being an element of why you
Mitigation.
should approve their special permit.
right.
And
So
I
let
agree,
me-
but what's the teeth of the decision?
the teeth would be that the special permit is lost.
If you don't build a second building.
Yeah,
Right.
by some
Okay.
event or date certain.
So I guess I need to get this clear in my head. So it's a condition though, Tom, right?
It is conditioned.
Yeah, yeah, it is a condition,
Okay.
but let's not like say it's like a special mitigating condition. It's a condition to make them do what they said they're gonna do.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go on, Jill.
Oh, that's it.
Understand?
I get it now. So your suggestion is approval on condition, so on and so forth.
Yes.
And the condition would be that they pull a building permit.
That they start construction on the second building within a year of their C of O.
Of the C of O being issued for the Burger King,
Yes,
that they start construction.
yes.
Is
Yeah.
there,
So
That
is there
construction
some like
shall commence-
permit certain kind of like concrete step at which we could
Right.
find that, like what's starting construction? Like you could grub a site a little bit and then go away for, you know.
Yeah.
Is
So would
pulling
it be pulling a permit or?
Is- Does
Approved
pulling a
building
permit-
permit.
Pulling the
and
permit doesn't just, you can
That's
pull
right,
a
that's-
permit.
Anybody can pull a permit.
I think maybe the way to accomplish what your desire is, maybe Commissioner Watson, the way to go about it is just like you said, that construction shall commence. I don't know if there's any other way,
Right.
just saying pulling a permit isn't
Right.
getting you what you're looking to get.
We want them to construct
Right,
and tell them that we want them to construct and let them figure out what it has to do in order to do that.
Now, another thing, instead of saying it should start, the construction should start, should we say to be less maybe it should end by this day, the building should be completed? Instead of because this permitting processes like you guys are talking about, this bidding time, they have to send it to bid. There's delays, change order, whatever it is. So something could maybe affect the starting, but maybe they should be completed within the next 2 years.
No,
Then
because
yeah, I mean, that might be the way to go. Maybe the condition is construction of the building located at the corner shall be complete by September of 2022.
right. So like that, they have some wiggle time to what permitting and the bidding and anything that they have to do, but they have to complete it by a certain date.
No.
Or else,
go ahead, Eugenio.
I'm stuck in, or what?
Or well, we'll find you. I don't know.
That the
Drive-through,
permit would expire,
yes.
would go out of effect.
So it's conditioned.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it is a condition, but it's not like the kind of condition where we're imposing
Right,
a
right,
new
right.
substantive requirement. We're just imposing a condition so that they
We're holding you to your
perform
word.
what they're saying they're gonna do.
They are in control of the condition, and that's,
Yeah.
There's not much of a condition, right? I see what Marley.
No, but that's okay. No, I mean, what else?
Well,
Okay,
does it
so-
wanna
Grub votes, the condition is really not if they're going to do what they say they're going to do, because that's a fact that they presented at the hearing. The
Right.
condition is the time frame, right? Because the time frame at the hearing was uncertain. We don't know when we're going to have that building. We're saying it has to be there by this time.
Within-
So
Okay.
it's more of a qualifier than a condition.
Now, again, are you looking at as a qualifier for that time, would you consider 2 years, 3 years,
2.
Oh,
2?
Yeah.
2 years
Yeah, that means
After
that they,
within 2 years.
after they get their C of O?
Yes.
That the building be completed?
Yes.
yes.
the shell of the building or the entire build out?
The building.
The
building.
No, you see what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a difference.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
would
if they
say,
want to come,
I would say the shell. All right, let's work with them a little bit. If they finish the shell, then
Yeah.
they'll give them some time to find the tenant, and
And
they
that-
could do the interior.
Mm.
Yeah, and that takes care of our concern.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I would just say the building. If they want to argue later that the building for all intents and purposes is complete for the purpose of meeting the requirements of not having variances, close
Yeah, but-
enough. The shell of the building is now we're micromanaging their project.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm not, when I hear building, I think I'm not concerned about the interior finishes.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Yeah.
Let's just say the building within 2 years of C of O.
Yeah.
Yeah, the building, sure.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, Anna, do you have that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any other
Sure.
questions? I know we've gone around the block with it, but thanks. Any other concerns?
Do you mind, before taking a vote, do you mind making it clear what the commission is going to be voting on?
Oh,
Okay.
I also don't want you guys to vote yet. For both cases, we're gonna have to go through all of the special permit standards, just given the intensity of both of these cases. I'm just gonna need you all to like.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, before we do that, go to the not the agenda standards. Basically, we're voting on approving the drive-through, 2-lane drive-through at the Burger King with the condition that they have a completed building within 2 years of their C of O of the Burger King. And no time limit, other than we took off the other three.
The temporary approval on the drive-through.
Right. So we eliminated that.
Right now, Dave, and this is Mr. Chair. It's just so if we say within 2 years of their certificate of occupancy, we almost given them 3.
No.
Because it's gonna take them a year or whatever it's gonna time to actually do the Burger King and then get the certificate of occupancy. And once that's when the timeline starts, it should be almost a year within. I mean, I'm just saying if we say 2 within the certificate of occupancy, it's gonna be more than 2.
But they can go sooner than later.
Yeah, I mean, we don't care in terms of your special permit, how far it is out from when you give the approval as how far it is out from when the drive-through starts operating. See what I mean? Like if the drive-through starts operating later on, you don't care. You're just concerned about when it starts operating, what conditions are in effect.
And that's when the clock starts.
Yeah.
Do you think it would be easy if we say, let's say it should be completed by like Joe said, September of 2020?
See, I don't think that's great because you want to condition it on the circumstances of the special use.
Right.
Okay.
Well, the problem with that is if they go to get their funding and COVID happens and 6 months goes by and now it's 6 months down the road and they may not actually start building the original Burger King for another year and now it's out of time. So I think to Tom's point, conditioning it on the C of O, they could start the Burger King before that starts sort of running. Something is already in the works to put this building, because the whole point of the building is to shield that drive-through, to protect the pedestrians, to keep the landscape, pedestrian friendly. So 2034 and all of that. So
I'm okay with that.
you have to tie one to the other.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that now. All right. So
Okay.
I'm okay.
All right, so that's what we're going to be voting on. And then getting back to Anna's concerns, we'll start with the special permit standards on page 1.
Page 2.
Staff report.
Yeah, if you could just give me a
Yep.
brief statement of how it's in harmony with the comp plan.
It's reusing a vacant site and hopefully providing some extra value there at the corner by adding pedestrian friendly streetscape.
And by providing screening.
Yes. So 2, it will not have a substantial or undue adverse effect upon adjacent property, character of the neighborhood, traffic. There should be more traffic, but the design has mitigated that by having those 2 lanes. If they can have 30 cars in the drive-through, even if that's not a Burger King someday, it's a Starbucks or whatever, I still don't think I've ever seen 30 cars in a drive-through, even at the McFlurry / McRib Bonanza of 1983. And, I think we'll be okay.
Okay,
Whether
you
it
good,
is-
Anna? Anna, are you good?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll start with 1, whether it will be in harmony with general purposes, goals,
Okay, go ahead, go ahead.
objectives, standards, and
I
implementation
think
strategies.
we just did number
we
1 and
just-
2. Now we're
Oh, okay.
So
I
now
would
we're
just-
on to the proposed building or use will be constructed, arranged, and operated as to not dominate the immediate vicinity.
Number 3, yes, and that's the case because of the building on the corner will screen the drive-through and the Burger King behind it.
Yeah, the whole plan redesign was to support number 3, so I think we're
Yes.
good there. Adequate services and facilities, yes, it's essentially replacing the same type of building, so there shouldn't be any undue burden on the infrastructure.
And making it more walkable and pedestrian friendly.
Exactly.
5 is no, so.
And no, destroying an Arby's is not losing any scenic or cultural significance.
Right.
I don't know. Arby's is
Milton,
almost.
I will fight you.
You want this on
You
the
get
chat?
shit so dirty.
She
I
knows
just want to
you will.
remind everyone that this is all recorded out there for eternity.
Right.
Okay, all right. Anna, you're all set with that information?
Yeah, thank you for that.
Okay, anybody else have any questions or concerns? And we know what we're voting for? All right, all those in favor of establishing, constructing a 2-lane drive-through at the proposed restaurant, Burger King, with the conditions indicated, and we'll have a roll call vote, starting with Carrie.
Mary Carroll, in favor.
Milton Pichardo in favor.
Sorry. Brad Flower in favor. I didn't realize I was on mute. My bad.
Rick
Henry
Mouser
Martin in favor.
I
Steve
couldn't hear,
Rebholz in favor.
I couldn't hear Richard and
Elio?
Who do you want to
Richard,
hear from?
I think we
Richard.
need the numbers added back to before their names.
Just gonna
because
say
it's
that we need our
an
numbers.
issue.
Right.
You guys have been so amazing during this. I'm disappointed.
and Steve, have you
Eugene, I'm
voted?
sorry.
Steve, have you voted?
Steve Rebholz, I vote in favor.
And Dave Watson, I also vote in favor.
Okay. All right, I was going alphabetically with your names, trying to rename
Right.
you, but anyways, let's see here. Okay, so by a motion of 7, or by a vote of 7-0-0, the motion passes, and that's approved on condition.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, guys. So we'll let Anna catch her breath and get set for the second.
Yep, I'm ready for you.
Number 2. All right, case number 2, E-04-20-21, 95 Ames Street, to establish an outdoor storage of shipping containers and semi-trailers, A Averti, on a vacant lot, and actually requiring planning commission approval. In the motion?
So move.
Thank you, Mr. Marlin. And Mr.
Second.
Fars, thank you for a second. All right,
This is Steve Rebholz.
discussion.
Yeah, Dave, this is Steve Rebholz, and I have a procedural question for staff, I think. The project was deemed or determined to be an unlisted action. And there's a section in the seeker regs that, and I just want to make sure I have it right. It's 617.4. So the listing of type 1 actions. If you have an unlisted action that's adjacent to a national historically registered, or a site that's national historically registered, the threshold is decreased to 25% of the threshold. So I think, I guess there's just kind of a factual question here to make sure that this wasn't an unlisted action, or perhaps it should have been a type 1 action based on 15.4 B9.
So,
That's a question for staff.
so I can actually respond to that. We determined it wasn't substantially contiguous, so it's across the street. And then we also, if you look at, and I know that not everybody's looking at seeker.
Jill, I couldn't hear you. Did you say it is substantially contiguous or not?
It is not, okay? And then if we reference, I think part of the question, Commissioner Rebholz, that you're asking is, did we look at number 7, any structure exceeding 100 feet above original ground level in a locality without any zoning regulation pertaining to height? So we determined that this was not a structure. And the other part is that we do have zoning regulations pertaining to height.
Yeah.
So in our estimation, from our review, we stuck with the unlisted action.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I guess I have a follow-up question for staff regarding line of sight on fences and those kinds of things. Is that based on the distance from the fence to the sidewalk or to the center of the street?
What do you mean by line of sight?
We had a case, an application several years ago. It was a recycling plant off of Lyle Avenue, and we had them to provide screening for the refuse piles. And we had to have, required them to have non-see-through screening for basically the perimeter of the facility so that you couldn't see it from the sidewalk. So my question is, line of sight, if you can't see it behind a solid fence that's 8 feet high, that's 8 feet from the base of the fence, is that acceptable? But if you're looking at it from 10 feet high across the street or 20 foot high across the street, does that sight line change?
So I think that's actually a good question for your colleagues on the commission. Because I think the commission needs to evaluate what sort of screening would be necessary for this use, if it's something that you would be willing to.
Yep, but Jill, I think they're asking a more basic question.
Okay.
So like at what level altitude is proper screening measured from? And I think the code says, at least on page 1 of the staff report, it's saying from 6 feet, which should be screened from public streets, alleys, lots to a minimum height of 6 feet. So
when we're looking at screening, we're looking at it from ground level.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, that's what they want to know.
Okay.
Whether they're looking at from ground
Okay.
level or whether like second floor or.
It's ground level. Commissioner
Ground
Watt.
level. So people who testified that they could see it from their either first or second floor porch, that's a moot point because that's not where it's measured from.
Yeah, but,
well,
yeah, but
Not fully.
still.
Okay.
So not fully.
there's still-
Oh, I'm sorry.
go ahead. I'm sorry, Jill, go ahead.
Not fully a moot point because you're evaluating whether or not the screening is proper for the scenario that we're presented with,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
So, as I mentioned, that's something that's part of your review. Does
Right.
it seem like the screening is adequate for the surrounding uses, the surrounding community, and for the uses that are presented in that area?
Yeah, but not necessarily for this use.
Well, the question is the screening, does that were the screening proposed, or would you condition that screening, some screening, whatever that might be,
Mhm.
to make this work in the neighborhood?
Okay.
Is there a means to get there?
Okay. Richard?
Well, I mean, I looked at the site from the other side of West Avenue, south side. And that makes a lower angle than if you're walking on the north side of West, where it's a steeper angle of view relative to the top of the fence. So, you know, from the south side of West Avenue, you could probably screen a 9-foot high storage unit, but 14-foot would still peak above it. And you'd have to have those storage units piled up way at the north end of their site, so you don't see it from the south side of West Avenue.
Mhm.
Can we talk about that for a minute too? Because when it goes through code compliance,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
no solid fencing is proposed, 14-inch tall shipping containers or 14-foot tall shipping containers. But it's not just 14-foot tall. We're talking 9 plus 9 plus 9 plus 9.
Mhm.
So a lot of these, the requirements applying to all districts keep referencing 14-foot tall storage containers. But what they're actually proposing on the plans is significantly taller. I mean, it's like 3-story building tall of
But
multicolored, potentially rusting shipping containers uncovered from any angle.
But Carrie, I mean, one thing in terms of looking at the standards, now visibility in other circumstances might be looked at differently, but in terms of whether you have to waive the standards, in the first one listed on page 1 of the staff report, and I'm looking at the code, you know, it's verbatim of the code. It says you only have to screen up to 6 feet. Like, to comply with that code, if you had a solid fencing, you would be complying with that code. Now, whether there are aesthetic effects other than that standard that you're concerned about, but if they had made the fence solid, you wouldn't need to waive this.
Got it.
This is be non-compliant, even though the thing to be screened is taller than 6 feet.
Okay, so that would address the first one, but not the outdoor storage part, which is where this debate is coming from about whether it's actually visible from the residence. Okay,
Right.
I'm caught up now.
Good. All right, other discussion, issues, concerns?
Yeah, I think it's still too tall, too big, I don't know that there's going to be any way to make that not openly a shipyard. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
which
No.
one of the
ahead.
points, I was going to say, one of the points of 2034 is to make, I quote, historic preservation, quote, to reduce barriers to rehabilitating buildings in preservation districts and foster enthusiasm for owning homes in these areas of the city. There's clearly been a lot of work put into getting people to invest in those houses, to bring in the Landmark Society, to confer on what windows to replace, I mean, that's a ton of money for individuals that have invested not only money, but, you know, 20, 30, 40 years of their lives into this whole row of houses, into kind of beautifying this neighborhood and trying to make the 19th Ward the gem that it was, is, could be, and keep it that way. And to drop hundreds of rusty shipping containers, and again, I keep saying rusty because it's what happens invariably. I'm just not convinced this is a good idea. On the other hand, it is kind of a brownfield. So it is a convenient use. It doesn't dig up a lot of, disturb a lot of that potentially toxic soil. So you do put it back on the tax rolls, and I'm tempted by that convenience, but I don't think that not only penalizing the folks who have invested for 30 years, but also de-incentivizing other neighborhoods that maybe have some deep character where people are going to come and invest and they're thinking, yeah, but are you going to put a shipping container storage yard directly across the street from me? You know, these rules are here for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure that I'm comfortable waiving them all.
Mm-hmm.
It's so clear that the neighborhood that showed up tonight is not in favor of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm having a hard time getting past that.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I have a,
I say something. I know that we look at each project differently, and we have projects like this in the past when we have an overwhelming amount of people against it, but we look at the benefit for the land use, which is what we look at, and we pass it through because it makes sense. I'm having a hard time here justifying the use of the land and the benefit that it's going to bring. Also, I think, in my opinion, that the application in itself, I'm going to say incomplete for lack of a better word, because I don't know if they really address the security.
Yeah.
I don't know if they have a good plan on how they're going to have the space secure so
Yep.
people go inside. I don't know if they have a noise mitigation to see, or maybe from other establishment that they have, that they could provide information that we could read and say, okay, so it's really not increasing the amount of noise. So a lot of those points that the community brought up, those are valid points, and I think they should be taken seriously.
Yeah.
Be not oppose the application necessarily. I think I'm more concerned that there was not enough due diligence before they came here.
Yep, I'm in agreement with you, Milton, on the application. Seeing the screen, I mean, it's very clear, needs to be fully screened, and then we walk through all the requirements. It just, yeah, it seems disconnected.
And that mesh screening, I did Google it because, you know, that's one of the benefits of Zoom.
Yeah.
It strikes me as something that's used more as a seasonal thing or
Yeah.
as a temporary thing.
Right.
It's not really, you don't put this mesh screening up and that's the next 20 years because it gets very sun faded quickly and kind of, so I could see if there wasn't, I could see that looking fairly ratty itself fairly quickly.
How do people feel if they limited their use to not stacking at all?
I mean, it wouldn't be
Just,
fully
you know,
screened then, right? That would take care of a lot of it would take care of a lot of neighborhood issues. It would still, I get the reason why they want to do this. They can't disrupt, can't disrupt soil. There can be penetration here, and that's part of the burn barrier issue. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, do you want to go through point by point?
Yeah.
Code compliance
yeah.
stuff and see kind of, just that maybe we can back test against, okay, what if it's a single layer? What if it
Yeah.
really was 14 feet or 9?
Yeah.
And
One thing I want to add is these standards are not like how you apply variances, like weighing the benefit to the applicant versus the, detriment to the community. This is just whether it satisfies the criteria, and not whether you're preventing an applicant from making as much money as they want to on a particular parcel. That is relevant in variance applications, but not with special permits.
And just, this is Steve Rebholz, just to kind of settle it, but thinking in my mind, there was a lot said about seeker, the seeker determination that was made having settled these issues. And Tom, I think your guidance at the end was helpful to me, that this is still a discretionary decision of this board, right? Certainly the seeker that was done is one of the pieces of information, but we're called upon to look at in making a special permit decision whether this particular circumstance in this particular location is appropriate given the standards. In addition, in this one, we're asked to waive some things that are very, very relevant to the visual impact of this issue, which kind of goes back to seeker. So if seeker presumed that, there's not a visual impact because of the code that says it's going to be completely screened, but then we got to come in and waive these things that won't completely screen it. It feels a little kind of like a chicken and egg thing to me, but it seems to me that, seeker having been completed, the screening is very relevant to the appropriateness or the inappropriateness of this use, and the stacking height of these components coupled with that screening is very relevant because of the, you know, the seriousness of the waivers that they're requesting, and we're the body that has to grant those waivers.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
not granting the waivers on the basis of our discretion about this particular special permit in this particular location directly across the street from a National Historic Register site, whether it's contiguous or substantially contiguous or across the street or not, it's relevant to me. So I just wanted to kind of make sure that I got that out there. So, you know, part of me wants to think before we go to the standards, we should be thinking about whether we're going to waive these things or not. Because if we're not going to waive them, we're not waiving them because of their impact.
Agreed. I
If
think
we were
that's
to
the
waive them,
appropriate-
then I think going to the standards and saying it doesn't have an impact makes more sense to me. If we say it doesn't have an impact from the standards and then we go and say we're not going to waive it, it feels a little reverse order to me. So I guess I'm in favor of discussing whether or not we're willing to waive these things.
Agreed.
Then inform me as to whether or not the 5 special permit standards are being met or not.
Yeah, so in terms of whether you're willing to waive these things, it's like you consider site-specific and property-specific considerations with the background of the 5 criteria too. So you're not getting entirely away from it, but
Got it. Okay.
yeah.
Well, let's talk about the waivers explicitly first.
Okay, so we'll start on page 1.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, so we're looking at the 120-158G. Mechanical equipment, open storage areas shall be screened by the public streets, alleys, paths, private streets, and abutting to a minimum of 6 feet height when solid screening is used. The material shall be compatible with the building, and that is not being proposed. Who would be willing to waive that standard? Anybody?
I'm not, Steve Rebholz, I'm not willing.
Are you willing to waive it in return for having I'm forgetting what it's called now, the gauze or what's the
The mesh?
yeah, the mesh?
Well, they proposed the mesh. This is Steve Rebholz speaking. I'm concerned about the permanence of that. My experience is that it is a temporary material, not a permanent material, and it is prone to degrading over time.
Yeah, I'm definitely not excited to waive this. But if that were the only barrier between this project's success or failure, perhaps. But I think it's more of a minor waiver as when we get to page 2, which is the additional requirements for outdoor storage.
I just have to clear my head here for a second. So the commission is saying that the, and now Tom's got it stuck in my head, the gauze.
Mesh.
The mesh is acceptable?
No, I'm not.
No,
Okay.
yeah, no.
And Steve Rebholz, I'm not either.
Yeah, Dave Watson, no.
Hey, my hang up here, Jill, too, and to put it out there is like, it's also not our job to come up with a solution off the cuff. Like they brought it up today with zero, to your point earlier, we didn't see a thing about it. Carrie, I did the same thing as you, and I Googled it quickly to see a couple different examples of what it is. But if the application is presented to us and it's not, like, I don't really feel any sort of responsibility to help them to push it through.
Well, in fairness, it was a note on the drawing, except details were not provided.
Yeah.
However, the planning commission still has the opportunity to say, hey, this is not acceptable as a material and for screening, but
Right.
this is. So
Yeah.
you still have that opportunity. It's not necessarily asking you to design it, but it's saying, through your experience of approving things of this nature, you feel that this would be appropriate.
And I sense a willingness to comply with whatever we wanted to do when it came to the fence. if the mesh doesn't work, you tell us. I mean, it was very obvious the willingness to comply. So
Yeah, but I guess my concern with that is that they didn't even offer to provide any screening, even though it was in the notes on the site plan. And I'm sure there've probably been notes and other plans that we've seen that we didn't know what they were speaking of, but they only addressed that tonight when they offered their testimony to
Right,
kind of cover what they wanted to do.
but we've made decisions where we included in the decision the goodwill of the applicant
Okay.
to fix something. So we in that sense, if this is a minor one, there might be some bigger ones, but this one,
Mhm.
they say, I'm going to give you a solid fence, that would mitigate that.
Right.
Yeah, based on the compliance issue.
Right. Okay.
So,
So here's, this is Steve Rebholz again. One of the things that strikes me about this site is its, prominent face on West and Ames.
Mhm.
I think is a real gateway opportunity. And putting up a solid screening fence of any kind right along the street.
Major artery.
If I were going to screen manufacturing, I would want to screen it with a building that's appropriately designed. So to just say a taller fence or a solid fence is appropriate here, it might accomplish screening, but then it has a negative impact of kind of working against, the walkability and the
Visual eyesore.
not so much a visual eyesore, just it's not an appropriate urban response to put a solid screening fence. I mean, it may not be, I don't know. So it takes some thought. I think it would take some effort, and I would need to see an elegant or at least an appropriate response that shows that, this is how we're going to do it. If I just wanted to screen something on every, main public road and put up a big old 8-foot solid fence, it doesn't feel like the right response to me.
Mhm.
and that is the second part to this. One is what to follow the guideline, and then weigh, the impact. So okay. So that, but we need. I think we needed to go through the first step so that then what is the impact, and then that's from my perspective, I agree with you in this.
All right, anybody else input? So I think we're basically saying that with the 158G, that solid fencing, we would not want to waive that. Okay,
Correct.
all right. Moving on to the off-street parking, any problems? Again, because of the nature of what they want to do, there wouldn't be that much parking off-street anyway.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
I don't really want to waive this one though, honestly. I mean,
okay, go
a big
ahead.
Chunk of 2034 is about walkability and alternative modes of transportation. And I don't think it's crazy burdensome to put in bike parking for 2 bikes. It encourages people from the neighborhood to come in and apply for the jobs there who may not have transportation, et cetera, et cetera. So just put in a bike rack for 2 bikes, please. It's literally, they're not expensive. You drop a hole in the ground. And now we don't have to waive it. And we are being consistent with saying this is important to us. We want to support alternative modes of transportation. We want walkability. We want healthy citizens. We don't necessarily want to be so car centric. So just put in the bike rack, in my mind.
I agree with you. It's just the use of the space. There's going to be a lot of trucks and a lot of things happening within that area that, although I'll say in theory it's true, we should, but what I don't know, if maybe we don't want it. If we're gonna approve something like this and have trucks moving in and out, you're gonna have blind spots because you're gonna have a whole bunch of. So I don't know if having people with bike It's
I'm
probably the
confident that in 14 acres, you can find a safe spot for a bike
Yes,
rack.
yeah,
know.
I agree with Carrie. You
Okay.
can find a rack for 2 bikes.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's put your money where your mouth is. If we're gonna waive it here, then we're gonna waive it in front of the little cafe that doesn't want to find the space, or the office building that our employees never bike to work. And, just no, we'll be consistent. It's important. Let's do it.
Okay. All right, then moving on to the second page. Vehicular parking, there's no access from West Avenue and Ames Street. Would you want to waive that?
special profession, man.
Say again?
I'm just reading.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
I was reading.
Well, they say there, sorry for the dogs. Sorry. There are existing curb cuts that they're not going to utilize now because they're all going to be coming off of, what is it? Is it Hague? That's what it is, right?
Yeah, Ames and West Ave.
Add the alley.
Hague Street, yeah.
Hague. So Hague is what they're actually using, but
On the
there are
other side.
existing curb cuts on West and on Ames that they don't want to get rid of because
They don't want-
future
For future use,
Yeah, they want to, I think that supports future development if we do this.
right.
So I would be okay with waiving this one. They're existing. It's not like they're creating new stuff, and that would support that building on the corner. If
And
this-
then also we have to remember that this is an M1 district. So the only thing that could go in there would be something that's not super commercial. It has to be some kind of manufacturing or related to that. Is that not right, staff?
Yeah,
Yeah, so this one I would be okay with waiving.
Right?
I agree with you, Carol.
And then also, then the third one, the parking lots used after sundown will be lighted. And they said basically no lighting is proposed because they're going to be basically 7 to 7. I'd be willing to waive that.
What time does the sun go down in the winter?
4:32 p.m.
It depends.
Yep.
Off the top of my head.
Winter's not the problem. It's the summer that doesn't get down until 8.
Right.
But that's still an hour after they're supposedly going to be in operation. So, I mean, I would be willing to waive that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, me too.
Anybody else? All right, good. All right. Then we move down to the additional requirements. The outdoor storage, 120-175. Again, goods goes to the screening.
Right.
Outdoor storage shall be fully screened to ensure the area not visible from the public right of way or adjacent residential properties. Not willing to waive that.
So across the street is not adjacent. Is that correct? Or it is adjacent?
To me, I think it would not be adjacent, it would be across the street. Adjacent would be if it was on the same side of the street. RG&E is adjacent.
Right.
But the public right of way
But the
is
right of
on the
way
sidewalks, yeah.
goes north and south of
Okay.
the center line of the street,
Right.
and it encompasses the public sidewalks.
Right.
See, I think a budding would be only touching without a road in between. But adjacent is something that is not absolutely on the boundary, and I'm looking it up right now to,
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you, Counselor.
let me make sure that I'm recalling that correctly.
And while Tom's looking that up,
Yeah.
I guess my concern with that, all those that were proposed on the application I would not support any of those. Because it's not solid screening, it's not gonna do, it's too permeable. Even putting in shrubs and things is gonna take them time to grow. And they're not gonna grow
Plus,
fast, they're not gonna grow
I-
fast enough, high enough.
That I
Yeah.
did notice. I did not notice the mesh webbing
Mhm.
no fence. But I did notice that even the trees they had proposed were, it was 2-foot shrubs and 4-foot
Right.
trees.
Yeah, there was.
So it's gonna be 20 years before those are
Mhm.
even close.
Yep.
To me, the thing about this particular location and this particular application, asking for outdoor storage in a portion of the site where you could screen it, and then still treat, the interface, the right of way differently.
Hmm.
They're proposing outdoor storage for the entire site, so that
Yeah,
it has to be at the perimeter,
Right.
which is, in my mind, contrary to, kind of the urban design goals that we would,
Mhm.
right.
I certainly respect that this is a challenge site, and, that as long as people can't dig it in, it's going to be very hard to do anything with.
Mhm. And I guess,
There are other surface uses that don't have, these particular code requirements that
Mhm.
screening that we have to waive, that, sitting here tonight, I'm just not comfortable waiving
Mhm.
this.
I agree.
I
No,
agree.
But to require the screening, I'm not comfortable with that either, because that's
Right.
right up at the perimeter,
Right.
and it puts it at, 20 feet tall, which doesn't make
Right, right.
sense. So, I'm not comfortable waiving it, and I'm not comfortable, creating a lot of tall screening in order to visually screen these things.
Covered up.
Walk.
Mhm. And I
Um,
guess that was my concern when I asked them if they considered relocating those various storage sites within the site, make them, put them far to the north as possible, rather than as far south and east, along Ames Street.
Yeah, it's just, this to me is not the right site to be placing 36-foot tall
Right.
Stacked containers.
containers. And it's, impossible to screen a 36-foot tall stack of storage containers on this site.
Well, unless you're David Copperfield.
Can we condition it on them? No, never mind.
Having-
I'm getting punchy.
Okay, Tom, did you find what you're looking for?
Yeah, so my recollection is correct. So if it's adjacent, that doesn't mean it has to be abutting. It could share a common border, which, as Richard was indicating, it does. The border of properties goes out to the middle of the street.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's not just the public right of way, it is the adjacent residential properties that we're concerned about.
Yes, yes.
Which goes back to my earlier comments about the investment in the homes in that long historic row, et cetera.
Yeah.
So no,
All right.
not willing to waive.
Again, anybody have any other concerns about not waiving the outdoor storage full screen on 120-175? I would say not. I would not want to waive those.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Oh,
Same.
And then moving down to number 2, screening should be sufficient height and density to completely hide the storage from public view. And they're not proposing solid fencing, only the current 6 to 8 foot high. Again, I would not want to waive that either.
Agreed. Same for the one right below it for passenger rail lines and
Yep.
other access ways.
Yeah.
Yes,
I,
Okay, so basically, if I look at our data correctly, we're really only interested in wanting to waive the bike storage, the bike parking, and that's it, I believe.
No, you're not waiving, you're not waiving the bike. That's right.
Yeah, we're not wait. No,
no,
not waving the bike.
Or
Carl,
lighting.
Yeah, the only two we said we would waive was vehicular access to parking from West Ave and Ames Street and lighting in the parking lot. We said we'd waive those two, but not the others.
yes, okay. All right.
Let me ask Jill something, and that is, just because you have the curb cuts there, like the site plan is not, that they have proposed does not have exits or entrances onto the facility now, right? Like, if they have curb cuts now, that doesn't mean they can use them. They'd have to go back for some kind of review.
No, whatever, so they have curb cuts there presently, and site plan committee recommended that they close the curb cut on West Avenue, and they have declined to do so. But there is no additional approval for use of any of those curb cuts.
Okay, I'm glad I asked because allowing them to keep those curb cuts would allow them to send traffic in and out, including. So are you still all right with that?
I don't think that's just because they're there and available doesn't mean that they can open them up.
Well, that's what I asked Jill, and she said they could. There's no other approval requirement for them
Correct.
to.
So it's for the planning commission to say, we don't want you to use whatever curb cuts that are existing that you feel are unnecessary.
Oh, okay, so we can make that call.
You can make that call.
By
You-
virtue of
Yeah,
The
by
site
virtue
plan-
of not issuing a waiver on this one.
Okay.
Yeah, the plan actually identifies them as existing driveways to be used. It doesn't just say
Say
existing
no.
driveway, it says existing
Yes.
driveway to be used.
Yeah, it says, yeah.
Yeah,
So we can say,
and the diagrams show that driveway being used with, and they show a truck maneuver through the driveway. So
Oh, yeah.
I would be in favor of not allowing the West Avenue curb cut,
and
I would-
consistent with the site plan reviews committee.
and what about the Ames Street curb cut? The Ames Street is
I guess
also,
I'm more concerned about West Avenue from a pedestrian standpoint.
Yeah, I would actually leave Ames as well to support that future development. Otherwise, you're left with one single exit over on the alley on the other side of the property.
let's say that again, Carrie.
I said I would support leaving Ames to be used because that's where that future development building is as well.
As
So it would
potential.
continue to support that potential future
Yeah,
development
right.
and would give the property 2 entrances and exits.
Okay.
Otherwise, we're leaving them with a single truck entrance and exit that's also used for all pedestrians, that's also used for, or, there's nothing in here that shows any other access point.
Okay. All right.
So no to West, yes to Ames. For me.
Okay.
David, this is Steve Rebholz, and I'm sorry to
No problem, Steve.
but I did want to just go back to the last of the waivers. Screening from major highways, passenger rail lines, and other access ways, right? And I just wanted to kind of think or ask, I mean, on a rail line, even if it's a passenger rail line, it's also a freight rail line, which is where these storage containers are shipping back and forth. I mean, I'm definitely more concerned about the public right-of-way side of this than I am the railroad side of this.
Mhm.
It's like not waiving that is, I don't have a good reason for not waiving that.
Right.
I have, I think, a good reason in my mind for not waiving the screening from the public right-of-way. But if you look at a railroad that's already got freight moving on it, even if it has passenger moving on it, passenger rail lines moving on it.
Yeah, I was thinking of the major highways kind of as that front-facing road, but that's covered by the public right-of-way.
Right, yeah.
So
And
I
really, there's no
concur.
interstate or anything that kind of drives by that would give the first impression to
Yeah.
someone by saying, oh, that's awful.
Yeah, I would be okay with waiving that one as well.
So I guess just not to, it may be academic, I don't know, but it feels like, the rigor of our discussion was more centered around the public right of way than the railroad line.
Agreed.
There really are no major highways. And I guess other access ways would be Hague Street and,
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, you all.
that's a public right of way too, right? Hague
Yeah,
Street.
this board waived that same requirement for some kind of staging facility.
Yeah, it was
like
the outdoor
nearby
storage
recently.
over on Mount Reed.
Yeah,
No, I think there was another one that was like west. near West Avenue, maybe further west.
Oh, was
That was
that,
Near
that was a-
railroads.
oh, was that the bus company?
Yeah, I can't remember the name.
Because there was a school bus company there on West Avenue and Buffalo Road.
Yeah, I think that might have been it, but I digress. You guys
Different
explain.
site, different scale, different height of,
Yeah.
of vehicles.
No, but Stephen's point is well made. I mean, we've
Okay.
been thoughtful about all of these other ones, so let's wrap up thoughtfully.
All right, now, do you want to go through the standards?
Do you think you need it, Anna, or
I don't
you
think,
got
we do.
enough?
I've got enough.
Okay.
So I think basically looking at what we decided and what we looked at as far as the code compliance is that we're only willing to waive a few small things. But the biggest concern is that we feel that the fencing not appropriate for this site doesn't manage to mitigate issues that we've heard testimony about, and doesn't support the need for them to be waived.
Agreed.
Yes.
All right, so basically, well, we have a decision that we can vote. Anybody have concern about voting right now? Or
None.
able to vote? All right, so the motion is that we need to establish outdoor storage and shipping containers, semi-trailers on a vacant lot, an action requiring our approval at 95 Ames Street. All those in favor, and we'll have a roll call vote.
Carrie Carroll opposed.
Red Flower opposed.
Eugenio Martin opposed.
Richard Mauser opposed.
Milton Pichardo opposed.
Steve Rebholz opposed.
Dave Watson opposed.
By a vote of 0-7-0, the motion is denied.
All right, that being said, our deliberations have come to an end. Any other closing comments, concerns, questions? Staff okay?
Thank you all for your devotion.
Thank you,
Thank
Tom.
you. Thanks, everyone.
All right, so we'll see everybody next month maybe, or do we have an agenda for next month, Anna?
Yes, we have an agenda. It's looking like 3, maybe 4 items.
Okay,
Yeah, while I have the floor, for the people that are viewing on YouTube, just want to reiterate that this concludes the Planning Commission hearing on September 14, 2020. We thank all applicants, citizens, and our volunteer devoted board member or commission members. Our next scheduled hearing will be held on Monday, October 19th. This hearing is scheduled to be virtual meeting as well and will be streamed at the same location, the mayor's office YouTube page.
Do we have any indication as to when hearings will go back to in-person?
We do not. The governor every 30 days decides whether to renew the permission. And he waits always to the 30th day.
Of course.
But there hasn't been any indication that so I think we could go back to in person if we figured out how to do the occupancy requirements and everything, but it's so difficult to do that and be able to anticipate how many people might show up that
Right.
it for at least the next month, we could pretty safely say we're going to still do it remotely.
Cool.
all right.
Everybody
Well,
be safe.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Jill. Thank you, other commissioners.
Thank you, Chair.
And we will see everybody same time, same bat station.
Woo.
Thank you.
All right, have a good evening.
Bye-bye.
You too.